The first transmission came at precisely 0317 hours Universal Standard Time. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working late in the Global Defense Research Center, her fingers dancing across holographic displays, when the massive screens around her suddenly erupted with light. A crystalline figure materialized in the central chamber, its form shifting between geometric patterns that hurt the eyes if viewed too long. The being spoke in a language that was simultaneously sound and thought, translated instantly by the center's advanced linguistic algorithms. Inhabitants of the third planet, the transmission began, your civilization has been observed. Your technological development has reached a threshold that requires immediate intervention. Elena leaned forward, her dark eyes narrowing. Something about the transmission felt off, not threatening exactly, but calculated. Years of studying complex systems had taught her to look beyond the obvious, to see the subtle interactions that most people missed. Around the world, similar transmissions played out. In Beijing, Tokyo, New Delhi, London, New York, and São Paulo, massive holographic displays appeared simultaneously. Governments scrambled, military leaders tensed. The general, public watched with a mixture of terror and fascination. The alien representative, if it could be called that, continued. The Galactic Concordance has determined that your species has reached a critical point. You will be given 30 solar cycles to prepare for complete integration. Resistance is mathematically improbable. In the research center, Elena's team began analyzing every microsecond of the transmission. Young researchers from diverse backgrounds worked together, their screens filled with complex algorithms and data streams. Sarah Kim, a quantum computing specialist, was already picking apart the communication's underlying structure. The language isn't just words, she muttered, her fingers flying across her interface. It's a complete mathematical system. Look at these embedded algorithms. They're trying to do more than communicate. They're attempting to analyze our entire response mechanism. Outside, the world was changing. Social media exploded with theories, fears, and an unexpected undercurrent of defiance. Instead of pure panic, something else was emerging, a collective, human response that the Galactic Concordance had not anticipated. In small towns and major cities, people began to organize. Community centers became impromptu research hubs. Universities opened their labs to anyone with an idea. High school students began designing communication decryption tools. Retired engineers came out of retirement, offering decades of problem-solving experience. Elena watched the global response with a sense of cautious hope. The aliens had presented an ultimatum, expecting fear and submission. Instead, humanity was doing what it did best, adapting, collaborating, innovating. They've made a critical miscalculation, she said to her team. They see us as a single, static system. But we're something much more complex. The research center became a hub of intense activity. Experts from every conceivable field were brought in. Linguists, mathematicians, psychologists, computer scientists, anthropologists. They worked in teams, breaking down every aspect of the transmission. Roberto Sanchez, a behavioral psychologist, made a breakthrough. Look at the communication structure, he explained, pointing to a complex holographic model. They're using a hierarchical information transfer model. But human communication is fundamentally different. It's networked, adaptive, nonlinear. As the first day of contact progressed, the initial fear began to transform. News networks showed something unprecedented. People helping each other, sharing resources, working together. In community centers and online forums, collaborative problem-solving became the primary response. The Galactic Concordance had given humanity 30 solar cycles, approximately 30 Earth days, to prepare for integration. What they didn't understand was that 30 days for humans was an eternity of potential. Elena looked at her team, a group representing multiple continents, backgrounds, and disciplines. Young and experienced researchers worked side by side, their differences becoming their greatest strength. They think they're observing us, she said quietly. But we're about to show them what observation really means. Outside the research center, the first day of first contact came to a close. The world had changed, but not in the way the Galactic Concordance had planned. Humanity was preparing, not with fear, but with an unprecedented spirit of collective determination. The real challenge was just beginning. The first alien probe arrived 3 days after the initial transmission. It descended through Earth's atmosphere like a perfect geometric crystal, its surface shifting and refracting light in patterns that defied conventional physics. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation center, surrounded by a team of researchers who represented the most diverse collection of human expertise ever assembled. Screens flickered with incoming data, each display showing a different analysis of the alien technology. "It's not just a probe," said Sarah Kim, her fingers dancing, across multiple holographic interfaces. "It's a complex information-gathering mechanism designed to map our entire technological infrastructure." The probe hovered above a major research facility in the Arizona desert, its presence both menacing and eerily beautiful. Satellites and ground-based sensors tracked its every movement, collecting data with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Around the world, similar probes appeared. They didn't attack, they didn't communicate, they simply observed, or so the Galactic Concordance believed. What the aliens didn't understand was how quickly humans could adapt. In a converted warehouse in Mumbai, a group of young engineers worked through the night. Led by Priya Sharma, a brilliant systems designer who had dropped out of her PhD program to join the global response team, they were developing something unprecedented. "Look at the probe's communication wavelengths," Priya explained to her team. Young faces from different backgrounds leaned in, their eyes bright with determination. "It's sending data back to its source, but it's using a frequency modulation we can exploit." Meanwhile, in a small research center in Cape Town, Roberto Sanchez worked with a team of psychologists and communication experts. They weren't just analyzing the probe's technology, they were studying its underlying communication philosophy. "The aliens think in linear systems," Roberto explained during a global video conference. "They expect predictable responses. But human communication is a network, fluid, adaptive, unpredictable." The first breakthrough came unexpectedly. A group of high school students in Seoul, participating in a global citizen science project, discovered a subtle pattern in the probe's data transmission. What seemed like random energy fluctuations was actually a complex communication protocol. Within hours, research teams around the world were analyzing the students' findings. Universities opened their labs. Retired engineers returned to work. Independent researchers shared data through secure global networks. Elena watched the collaborative effort with a sense of growing excitement. The Galactic Concordance had expected a hierarchical, top-down human response. Instead, they got a global, networked approach that defied traditional military or scientific structures. "They're giving us a test," she told her team, "and we're going to show them exactly what human innovation looks like." The probe continued its observations, unaware that it was becoming the most studied piece of technology in human history. Every scan, every energy emission, every microscopic detail was being analyzed, decoded, and understood. In a breakthrough moment, Priya's team in Mumbai created a communication disruption protocol. It wasn't about destroying the probe, it was about sending it back with deliberately misleading information. A digital Trojan horse that would look like valuable data to the alien observers. "We're not just defending," Priya explained during a global briefing. "We're turning their own technology into a method of communication." Researchers began to see the probe not as a threat, but as an opportunity. Each discovery was shared instantly across global networks. Universities, research centers, even high school science clubs became part of a massive, distributed research project. The Galactic Concordance had given humanity 30 days, but in those first few days, humans were already rewriting the rules. A first contact. As night fell across different parts of the world, the alien probe continued its silent observation. What it was recording was not a picture of a vulnerable planet, but a complex, adaptive civilization that was far more than the sum of its parts. Elena Rodriguez looked at the probe's image on the main screen and allowed herself a small smile. The real conversation was just beginning. Outside the research center, the first probe continued its mysterious hover, unaware that it had become the most studied object in human history. Humanity was preparing, not with fear, but with an unprecedented spirit of collaborative innovation. The Galactic Concordance was about to learn a fundamental lesson about human potential. The world had transformed in less than a week. What began as a potential global crisis had become an unprecedented moment of human collaboration. Research centers, universities, and community spaces buzzed with a collective energy that defied the aliens' expectations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Global Response Center, watching a real-time map that pulsed with collaborative research efforts. Each node represented a team, each connection a shared breakthrough. The Galactic Concordance believed they were observing a single hierarchical civilization. Instead, they were witnessing a living, breathing network of human innovation. "We're not just responding," Elena told her core team. "We're rewriting the entire concept of first contact." In a converted shipping warehouse in Lagos, a team led by Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo was developing something revolutionary. They had discovered that the alien probe's communication system relied on a rigid quantum entanglement protocol. By introducing deliberate quantum uncertainty, they could create communication noise that would completely confuse the alien observers. "It's like speaking in riddles," Adebayo explained during a global video conference. "We're not blocking their communication. We're making it impossible for them to understand." Simultaneously, a group of indigenous programmers in the Andes Mountains developed a communication strategy based on traditional storytelling methods. They argued that human communication was not just about information transfer, but about context, emotion, and shared experience, concepts entirely foreign to the linear thinking Galactic Concordance. The global response was anything but uniform. In Tokyo, researchers used principles of origami and complex geometric folding to develop adaptive communication interfaces. A team in Cape Town applied ecological system principles to understand the probe's technology. In New Delhi, psychological researchers explored how cultural diversity could be a strategic advantage. Sarah Kim, the quantum computing specialist, made a breakthrough that sent shockwaves through the research community. By introducing deliberately unpredictable data patterns, they could create a form of technological camouflage that would make human systems appear both more and less advanced than they actually were. "We're not hiding," Sarah explained. "We're creating strategic ambiguity." The Galactic Concordance's probes continued their observations, collecting what they believed was valuable data. They didn't realize that each piece of information was carefully crafted, a global, collaborative misinformation campaign that was both defense and communication. Roberto Sanchez, the behavioral psychologist, had developed a fascinating theory. "They see us as a problem to be solved," he told Elena, "but we're not a problem. We're a living, adaptive system that defies their understanding of intelligence." Community centers became impromptu research hubs. High school students worked alongside retired engineers. Artists collaborated with scientists. The traditional boundaries of expertise dissolved in the face of a collective challenge. Priya Sharma's team in Mumbai took a completely unexpected approach. Instead of trying to block or deceive the alien technology, they began to study its underlying communication philosophy. What made these probes work? What were their fundamental assumptions? "Understanding is our greatest weapon," Priya said during a global briefing. "We're not just defending, we're learning." The global communication network became something extraordinary. Researchers shared findings in real time, creating a distributed intelligence that was faster and more adaptive than any centralized system. The Galactic Concordance's hierarchical thinking could not comprehend this approach. As the 10th day since first contact approached, the alien probes continued their silent observation. They recorded massive amounts of data, completely unaware that each data point was part of an elaborate global strategy. Elena looked at the world map in the response center. What appeared chaotic was actually a highly coordinated, deeply intelligent response. Humanity was not a single entity to be conquered. It was a complex adaptive network that could respond to challenges in ways no single intelligence could predict. "They think they're observing us," she said quietly to her team. "But We're the ones doing the real observation. Outside, the alien probes continued their silent vigil. They were collecting data that would challenge everything the Galactic Concordance understood about intelligence, communication, and potential. Humanity was preparing, not with weapons, not with fear, but with an unprecedented spirit of collaborative innovation that would redefine the very concept of first contact. The 15th day of first contact arrived with an unexpected escalation. The Galactic Concordance, frustrated by humanity's incomprehensible response, began to change its approach. Massive energy signatures appeared in Earth's orbital space. Ships, if they could be called ships, materialized with geometric precision. They were not weapons in any traditional sense. They were instruments of technological domination, designed to systematically dismantle human communication and technological infrastructure. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched the initial deployment from the Global Response Center. Her team had been preparing for this moment, though not in ways the aliens could possibly understand. They think technology is a linear system, Elena said to Sarah Kim, her quantum computing specialist. We're about to show them how wrong they are. Around the world, the response was immediate and coordinated. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually a meticulously planned adaptive network. Community centers transformed into local response hubs. Universities redirected entire research programs. Manufacturing facilities began producing adaptive defense technologies. In the Brazilian Amazon, a team of indigenous engineers and environmental scientists had been developing something extraordinary. Led by Maria Santos, they had created a communication and defense system inspired by ecological networks. Their approach mimicked how forest ecosystems respond to threats: distributed, adaptive, and nearly impossible to completely disrupt. We're not building a wall, Maria explained during an emergency global briefing. We're creating a living, breathing defensive network. The Galactic Concordance's first technological assault began with what they believed would be a simple disruption of global communication systems. Instead, they encountered something completely unexpected. Priya Sharma's team in Mumbai had developed a communication protocol that was part technology, part cultural adaptation. When the alien systems attempted to break down human communication networks, they found themselves redirected through complex, almost organic pathways. Roberto Sanchez, the behavioral psychologist, had been preparing for this moment. His research team had developed psychological response strategies that would make human communication patterns appear both chaotic and brilliant. The aliens would find themselves unable to distinguish between critical and non-critical information. We're not hiding, Roberto told Elena. We're making ourselves impossible to completely understand. The first major confrontation began in Earth's orbital space. The Galactic Concordance's technological instruments began their systematic approach. Precise, calculated, expecting total compliance, what they encountered was anything but predictable. Local defense systems, developed through a global collaborative effort, responded in ways that defied conventional military strategy. Instead of direct confrontation, they created adaptive interference patterns. Communication channels became labyrinths. Defense systems shifted and changed like living organisms. Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo's team in Lagos had developed a breakthrough in quantum communication disruption. Their systems didn't just block alien technology. They introduced calculated uncertainty that made precise targeting impossible. Around the world, something extraordinary was happening. Communities that had previously been divided now worked with unprecedented coordination. A high school coding club in Seoul might develop a communication algorithm that would be integrated into global defense systems within hours. The Galactic Concordance had expected a hierarchical, predictable response. Instead, they found themselves confronting a global network that was more than the sum of its parts. Every attempt to systematically disable human infrastructure was met with an adaptive, nearly organic response. Elena watched the global response with a sense of profound pride. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was evolving in real time, turning the very concept of technological conflict on its head. They see us as a problem to be solved, she told her team. We're showing them that we're a living solution. As The first wave of technological assault began to dissipate. The Galactic Concordants found themselves in unfamiliar territory. Their precise, calculated approach had been met with something they could not comprehend: a global, collaborative intelligence that defied their understanding of technological conflict. The real battle was just beginning. And humanity was ready. Outside the response center, the alien technological instruments continued their assault. But with each moment they were learning a fundamental truth about human potential. Humanity was not a civilization to be conquered. It was a living, adaptive network that would redefine the very concept of technological conflict. The 20th day of first contact marked a turning point in human technological development. What had begun as a defensive response had transformed into something far more profound, a global technological renaissance that would reshape human understanding of innovation. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the central research hub, surrounded by holographic displays that showed a living network of human collaboration. Each display represented a different breakthrough, a different approach to understanding and adapting alien technology. "We're not just defending," Elena told her core team. "We're reimagining what technology can be." Sarah Kim had made the first major breakthrough. Her quantum computing team had discovered a way to create adaptive communication interfaces that could simultaneously translate, interpret, and strategically respond to alien technological signals. It wasn't about blocking communication, it was about transforming it. "Think of it like a universal translation that also acts as a strategic filter," Sarah explained during a global briefing. Her team had combined principles from quantum mechanics, linguistics, and adaptive system design to create something entirely unprecedented. In the Amazon Research Center, Maria Santos led a team that was developing biotechnological interfaces inspired by ecological networks. Their approach looked nothing like traditional technology. Instead, they created adaptive systems that mimicked the resilience of complex biological ecosystems. "Technology isn't just about machines," Maria argued. "It's about adaptive intelligence. We're learning from the planet itself." Meanwhile, in a converted warehouse in Mumbai, Priya Sharma's team was pushing the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. They had begun to reverse engineer fragments of alien technology, not to copy, but to understand fundamental principles of communication and energy transfer. "Each piece of technology tells a story," Priya explained. "We're not just analyzing, we're learning a new language of innovation." The global research effort had transformed traditional boundaries of expertise. High school students worked alongside quantum physicists. Artists collaborated with engineers. Community research centers became as important as government laboratories. Roberto Sanchez contributed a crucial psychological perspective. His team had developed adaptive learning protocols that allowed human technological systems to learn and evolve in real time. It wasn't just about processing information. It was about understanding context, intention, and potential. "We're creating technology that thinks," Roberto said. "Not in a linear way, but in a networked, adaptive way." Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo's team in Lagos made a breakthrough that sent shockwaves through the global research community. They discovered a method of energy transfer that could potentially revolutionize everything from communication to transportation. "We're not just defending against alien technology," Adebayo explained. "We're developing technologies that the Galactic Concordants could never have anticipated." The Galactic Concordants continued their observation, completely unaware that each of their technological probes was becoming a learning tool for humanity. What they saw as potential conquest, humans saw as an opportunity for unprecedented innovation. Elena watched the global research network with a sense of wonder. Countries that had previously been rivals now worked with seamless coordination. A breakthrough in a small research center in Chile could be integrated into global systems within hours. As the 25th day approached, something extraordinary was happening. Humanity was not just responding to an external threat. It was experiencing a technological transformation that would redefine the very concept of innovation. The research centers were no longer just defensive positions. They had become crucibles of human potential, places where the boundaries between technology, biology, psychology, and creativity dissolved. They think they're observing us, Elena said quietly to her team, but we're the ones truly seeing. Outside, the research center, the alien technological instruments continued their silent observation. They recorded massive amounts of data, completely unaware that each scan was teaching humanity something profound about the nature of technology, communication, and potential. Humanity was evolving, not through conflict, but through an unprecedented spirit of collaborative innovation. The Galactic Concordance had come expecting to find a civilization to conquer. Instead, they were about to witness a technological transformation that would challenge everything they understood about intelligence and potential. The real revolution was just beginning. The 30th day of first contact arrived with a psychological tension that defied traditional understanding of conflict. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood that the real battle was no longer technological. It was about understanding, communication, and the fundamental nature of intelligence. Roberto Sanchez's psychological research team had become the most critical group in the global response network. They weren't just analyzing alien communication, they were decoding the very philosophy of the Galactic Concordance. Every communication is a window into their thought process, Roberto explained during an emergency global briefing. And what we're seeing is a fundamentally rigid understanding of intelligence. Around the world, research centers had transformed into interdisciplinary hubs of psychological innovation. Linguists worked alongside neuroscientists, anthropologists, collaborated with communication experts. Artists brought perspectives that traditional scientific approaches could never capture. In a breakthrough moment, a team of indigenous communication specialists from various global communities revealed a critical insight. They argued that the Galactic Concordance understood communication as a linear transfer of information. Human communication, however, was something far more complex, a living, contextual, emotionally nuanced exchange. Maria Santos from the Amazon Research Center demonstrated how communication could be understood through ecological principles. Communication is not about sending and receiving, she explained. It's about creating relationships, building understanding. The Global Response Network began to develop what Roberto called adaptive communication strategies. These were not just methods of communication, but complex psychological approaches that could shift and change based on the specific context of interaction. Priya Sharma's team in Mumbai contributed a crucial technological dimension to this psychological approach. They developed communication interfaces that could adapt in real time, changing not just the content of communication, but the very method of communication itself. We're not just talking, Priya said. We're creating a living dialogue that can transform itself. Sarah Kim's quantum computing team discovered something extraordinary. The alien communication systems relied on absolute certainty. Human communication, by contrast, thrived on uncertainty, creativity, and multiple interpretations. Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo's team in Lagos took this a step further. They developed communication strategies that deliberately introduced controlled uncertainty, psychological tactics that would completely confuse the linear thinking Galactic Concordance. The psychological warfare was subtle, almost imperceptible. It wasn't about aggression or conflict. It was about demonstrating a fundamentally different way of understanding intelligence, communication, and potential. Global media became an unexpected weapon. News networks, social platforms, and communication channels were transformed into sophisticated, psychological response systems. Each broadcast, each shared piece of information became part of a complex global strategy. Elena watched the global network with a sense of profound amazement. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually a meticulously coordinated psychological response. Communities that had previously been divided now worked with unprecedented psychological coordination. They expect us to be predictable, Elena told her team. We're going to show them that unpredictability is our greatest strength. As the final days of the initial 30-day period approached, the Galactic Concordance found themselves confronting something they could not comprehend. Human communication was not a system to be decoded. It was a living, breathing network of potential. Roberto Sanchez's most profound insight came in the final briefing before the critical moment. Intelligence is not about having the right answer, he explained. It's about the ability to ask the right questions, to adapt, to understand context. The psychological battle had become the true front line of first contact. It was a conflict fought not with weapons, but with understanding, creativity, and an unprecedented ability to reimagine communication itself. Outside the research center, the alien observation systems continued their precise, calculated scans. They recorded massive amounts of data, completely unaware that each piece of information was part of a complex psychological strategy. Humanity was preparing, not with fear, not with aggression, but with an unprecedented spirit of psychological innovation that would redefine the very concept of intelligence. The Galactic Concordance had come expecting to find a civilization to categorize, to understand, to potentially control. Instead, they were about to encounter a psychological complexity that would challenge everything they understood about communication, intelligence, and potential. The real transformation was just beginning. The 40th day of first contact arrived with a tension that resonated across the entire planet. What had begun as an alien ultimatum had transformed into humanity's most extraordinary moment of collective potential. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Global Response Center, surrounded by a team that represented the most diverse and innovative collection of human expertise ever assembled. The final confrontation was about to begin, not with weapons but with something far more powerful. This is not about winning or losing, Elena told her team. This is about showing them what human potential truly means. The Galactic Concordance had arrived in full force. Massive technological constructs filled Earth's orbital space, their geometric shapes defying traditional understanding of engineering. They believed this would be a simple resolution, the final moment of planetary submission. They were wrong. Sarah Kim's quantum communication team had been preparing for this moment. They had developed a communication system that was part technology, part living network, part psychological strategy. It wasn't about blocking or fighting. It was about creating a dialogue that the aliens could never comprehend. In the Amazon Research Center, Maria Santos led a team that had developed adaptive defense systems inspired by ecological networks. Their approach treated planetary defense as a living, breathing system, constantly changing, impossible to completely predict or disable. Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo's team in Lagos had created something extraordinary. They had developed energy transmission technologies that could simultaneously communicate, defend, and transform incoming alien signals. It was a system that blurred the lines between communication, defense, and innovation. Priya Sharma's research group in Mumbai had prepared their most complex communication protocol yet. It was a system that could adapt in real time, changing not just its content but its entire method of communication with each interaction. Roberto Sanchez stood ready with his psychological response team. They had developed communication strategies that would challenge the very foundation of the Galactic Concordance's understanding of intelligence. The confrontation began not with a bang, but with a complex, multi-layered communication that defied traditional understanding. The human response was a living network, each communication center, each research hub, each community working as part of a global adaptive system. Alien technological systems attempted to scan, to categorize, to understand. But with each attempt, they found themselves confronted with something completely unprecedented. Human communication was not a system to be decoded. It was a living, breathing network of potential. Elena watched the global response with a sense of profound pride. Countries that had previously been rivals now worked with seamless coordination. A strategy developed in a small research center in Chile could be integrated into global systems within moments. The Galactic Concordance had expected a hierarchical, predictable response. Instead, they encountered a global network that was more than the sum of its parts. Every attempt to categorize or control was met with an adaptive, nearly organic response. "We're not just defending," Elena said quietly. We're demonstrating a fundamental truth about intelligence. The confrontation reached its critical moment. Alien technological systems began their final approach, expecting total compliance. What they encountered was a planetary network that could not be simply scanned or understood. Each human communication center became a node in a global adaptive network. Research hubs in different continents worked with unprecedented coordination. What looked like chaos to an outside observer was actually a meticulously coordinated global strategy. Sarah Kim's team introduced quantum uncertainty into every communication channel. Maria Santos's ecological defense systems created adaptive interference patterns. Priya Sharma's communication protocols transformed with each interaction. The Galactic Concordance found themselves confronting something they could not comprehend. Humanity was not a civilization to be categorized or controlled. It was a living, adaptive network that would redefine the very concept of intelligence. As the final moments of confrontation approached, the human response became something extraordinary. It was not about defeating an enemy. It was about demonstrating a fundamental truth about potential, adaptation, and the nature of intelligence itself. Outside the response center, the alien technological systems continued their approach, but with each moment they were learning a fundamental truth about human potential. Humanity was ready, not with fear, not with aggression, but with an unprecedented spirit of collaborative innovation that would challenge everything the Galactic Concordance understood about intelligence. The final confrontation was just beginning. The silence was profound. Alien technological systems hung motionless in Earth's orbital space, their complex geometries now seeming almost fragile. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the Global Response Center, watching as the most extraordinary moment in human history unfolded. They had not defeated the Galactic Concordance. They had transformed the entire concept of first contact. Sarah Kim approached Elena, her eyes bright with the excitement of scientific discovery. "They're trying to understand," she said quietly. "Not attack, not conquer, but truly understand." The Global Research Network had become something far beyond a defensive system. It was a living, breathing demonstration of human potential. A network that challenged every fundamental assumption about intelligence, communication, and possibility. Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo's team in Lagos had been the first to detect the subtle shift. The alien technological systems were no longer scanning or attempting to categorize, they were listening, truly listening. In the Amazon Research Center, Maria Santos and her team had prepared for this moment. Their adaptive communication systems were not weapons. They were bridges, complex, nuanced pathways of understanding that could transform fundamental assumptions about interaction. Roberto Sanchez, the lead psychological researcher, explained the breakthrough during an emergency global briefing. "This was never about conflict," he said. "This was about communication. About demonstrating that intelligence is not about control, but about adaptation, understanding, and potential." Priya Sharma's communication research team had become the unexpected heroes of the confrontation. Their protocols had created a form of communication that was simultaneously technological, psychological, and deeply human. The Galactic Concordance was experiencing something unprecedented. Humanity had not just defended itself, it had demonstrated a form of intelligence that defied their most fundamental understanding. Global communication networks lit up with a complex, nuanced response. This was not a moment of victory. This was a moment of transformation. Elena watched as representatives from different research centers began to collaborate on the next phase of communication. Countries that had previously been rivals now worked with unprecedented coordination. A strategy developed in a small research center in Chile could be integrated into global systems within moments. "We're not just talking to them," Elena said to her team. "We're showing them an entirely new way of understanding intelligence." The alien technological systems began to change. Their rigid geometric forms became more fluid, more adaptive. It was as if they were learning in real time from the human communication network. Sarah Kim discovered something extraordinary. The alien systems were not just receiving information, They were fundamentally changing their own communication protocols based on human interaction. In community centers and research hubs around the world, people began to understand the profound nature of what was happening. This was not a war. This was a conversation, the most important conversation in human history. Dr. Adebayo Okonkwo's energy transmission technologies had created something unprecedented. They had developed a communication method that was simultaneously a defense, a dialogue, and an invitation to understanding. The Galactic Concordance had arrived expecting to find a civilization to categorize, to control. Instead, they encountered a network of potential that challenged everything they understood about intelligence. Maria Santos from the Amazon Research Center captured the moment perfectly. Intelligence is not about having the right answer, she explained during a global broadcast. It's about the ability to ask the right questions, to adapt, to understand context. As the days passed, something extraordinary happened. The alien technological systems began to integrate with human communication networks, not as a form of conquest, but as a genuine attempt to understand. Roberto Sanchez's psychological research team discovered that the Galactic Concordance was experiencing a fundamental transformation. Their understanding of intelligence was being completely reimagined. The final transmission came not as a declaration of surrender, but as an invitation. The Galactic Concordance wanted to learn, to understand, to grow. Elena Rodriguez looked at the global communication network, a living, breathing demonstration of human potential. They had not just survived. They had transformed the entire concept of first contact. Outside the response center, the alien, technological systems continued their subtle transformation, but now they were no longer observers. They were participants in the most extraordinary conversation in galactic history. Humanity had not just defended itself. It had demonstrated a fundamental truth about intelligence, potential, and the power of collaborative understanding. The real journey was just beginning.